Think about the last time your survival was actually at stake. Not stressed, not anxious, actually at risk of dying. For most people watching this, the answer is never. And that's the problem. Because evolution doesn't care about comfort. It only cares about who reproduces. And for the first time in human history, almost everyone does. So what happens to a species when death stops choosing? Most people assume evolution is something that happened to us. Past tense. A long, slow process that turned fish into lizards, lizards into mammals, and eventually produced something that could sit in a chair and watch videos about it. Done. Finished. The end product. But that assumption is wrong in a way that should genuinely unsettle you. Because the process didn't stop, it never stops. And what it's doing to us right now is something Darwin never could have predicted. Evolution never stops because it can't. It's not a program with an off switch. It's not a journey with a destination. It's just math. Which genes get passed on? Which ones don't? That calculation runs every single generation, invisibly, automatically, with no awareness of what it's building. And as long as humans are reproducing, that math is still running. The real question was never whether we're still evolving. It's what we're evolving into, and the honest answer is that we don't fully know. But the pieces we do have should change how you think about everything from your cravings to your anxiety to the children being born right now. Let's start with what evolution actually needs to work. 3 things. Variation. Individuals in a population have to differ from each other. Heritability. Those differences have to pass to offspring. And selection pressure. Something in the environment has to favor some variance over others. Remove any one of those 3 and evolution stalls. For 300,000 years, humans had all 3 in crushing abundance. The environment was brutal and unforgiving. Disease, starvation, predators, cold, drought. The selection pressure was enormous. If you carried genes that made you slightly more resistant to infection, slightly better at reading social dynamics, slightly more capable of tolerating hunger, you lived longer. You had more children. Your variants spread through the population. The ones who didn't carry them died younger, had fewer children, faded out. Generation by generation, the population shifted toward whatever worked in that specific environment. Then we started changing the environment, not gradually. Overnight, by evolutionary standards, agriculture began roughly 12,000 years ago. It changed everything about how humans lived, where we slept, what we ate, how densely we packed ourselves together. Then medicine became genuinely effective about 150 years ago. Vaccines, antibiotics, surgery, sanitation, clean water. All of it arrived inside a single geological blink. And what all of it did, piece by piece, was dismantle the filter. Diseases that had killed half of every generation for hundreds of thousands of years stopped killing anyone. Famines that had wiped out entire populations became manageable, then rare. Children who carried genes that would have ended their lives at age 5 survived, grew up, fell in love, and passed those genes forward. This is obviously good. This is the entire point of civilization. But from evolution's perspective, something genuinely strange happened. The selection pressure that had been shaping our species for 300 millennia started to dissolve. And when you remove the filter, the math changes in ways that are difficult to think about clearly. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. In 2007, a team of researchers at the University of Wisconsin published a study analyzing 3.9 million DNA variants across the human genome. What they found shook the field. Human evolution hadn't slowed down after the agricultural revolution. It had accelerated. The rate of adaptive genetic change in the last 10,000 years was roughly 100 times faster than at any point in the previous million years. 100 times faster. The invention of farming didn't pause our evolution. It threw it into a gear nobody had anticipated. The new environments we built, crowded cities, grain-heavy diets, domesticated animals living alongside us, created entirely new selection pressures. And our genome responded faster than anyone thought possible. But faster doesn't mean better directed. And this is where it gets complicated. Some of the changes were clean adaptations to the world we'd built. Lactase persistence, the ability to digest milk into adulthood, barely existed before cattle farming. Hunter-gatherers had no use for it. Once pastoral societies formed, people who could extract calories from livestock milk survived lean seasons better than those who couldn't. The gene spread. Today, roughly 35% of the global population carries it, concentrated precisely in the populations with the longest history of cattle herding. New environment, new pressure, new gene. Straightforward. The same logic applies to amylase. amylase, the enzyme your body uses to break down starch. Hunter-gatherers carried 2 or 3 copies of the relevant gene on average. Populations with long agricultural histories carry 6 or 7. Your body didn't just tolerate the grain-heavy diet your ancestors invented, it rewired itself to run on it. We didn't just adapt to farming. Farming restructured what we were at the genomic level. But here's what nobody talks about. Selection pressure doesn't disappear because medicine improved. It shifts. The variables that determined survival for 300,000 years, raw physical resilience, immune function, tolerance for caloric scarcity, matter less now than they ever have. What shapes reproductive success in the modern world looks completely different. It involves navigating complex social institutions, accessing economic resources, forming and maintaining long-term relationships, delaying gratification long enough to build something stable. Traits that would have been nearly invisible to natural selection in a hunter-gatherer band now determine everything about how a modern life unfolds. Evolution is still running the calculation. It's just calculating against a completely different exam. And the exam changed so fast that our biology hasn't caught up with our culture. This is what biologists call evolutionary mismatch. Your nervous system is running code that was written for a world that no longer exists. The craving for sugar that once drove your ancestors to climb dangerous trees and endure hundreds of bee stings for a dripping honeycomb now fires every time you pass a vending machine. The threat detection system that once kept you alive on the savannah now floods your body with cortisol during a performance review. The social belonging instincts that once held small groups of 150 people together now get hijacked by platforms engineered to keep you anxious and engaged. You are not malfunctioning. You are precisely calibrated for a set of conditions that disappeared thousands of years before you were born. But the most unsettling part of this story isn't in the past. It's happening right now, because for the first time in the history of our species, we are no longer passive passengers in our own evolution. In 2018, a scientist in China named He Jiankui announced that he had used a gene editing technology called CRISPR to modify the genomes of 2 human embryos. The girls were born healthy, and they carried a genetic alteration that would pass to their children, and their children's children. For the first time in 4 billion years of life on Earth, a species had deliberately rewritten its own heritable code. The scientific community was horrified. He Jiankui went to prison. But the technology didn't disappear. It got cheaper, it got faster, it got more precise. And the question it cracked open is one our species has never had to answer before. If we can edit the human genome, what do we edit toward? If you could remove the variant linked to early onset Alzheimer's, would you? If you could increase baseline immune resilience in your children, would you? And if those choices become available only to populations with the resources to access them, what happens to a species when evolution stops being random and becomes a market? We are the first generation in human history that has to answer that question, not as a thought experiment, as a practical decision that is already being made in laboratories right now. Think about the last time your survival was actually at stake. The answer for most of you is never, and that is the most radical fact about modern human existence. For 300,000 years, every single person who ever lived faced the genuine possibility of not making it. That pressure built everything you are, your immune system, your hunger, your fear response, your need for other people in the room. Every part of your biology was forged in a world where the cost of being poorly adapted was death. That world is gone, and the one that replaced it is changing faster than evolution has ever been asked to follow. We didn't stop evolving. We just stopped letting evolution decide what we become. And for the first time in the history of life on this planet, something other than nature is holding the pen. We haven't agreed on what that something should be.